Hello again. When last I talked about Alex Belfield and the charges he is currently facing at Nottingham Crown Court, some people thought that I was a supporter of his. Others had the impression that I was his enemy, which is probably good. It suggests to me that I was fairly even-handed. But still, I am neither. I'm not his friend, I'm not his enemy or supporter or opponent or anything. I don't know him, and I know only what I've seen reported about the case against him. I don't propose to comment on the case because that would be most improper, and besides, I haven't the least idea whether or not he is innocent or guilty. What I want to talk about is the way that the trial is being reported, both by newspapers and the defendant himself. On the first day of Belfield's trial, the Independent newspaper reported that he could be seen smirking and nodding in the dock as some of the messages he was alleged to have sent were read out to the court. The choice of the word smirking rather than smiling is a deliberate attempt to give an unfavourable impression of the defendant. The dictionary definition of smirking is to smile in an irritatingly smug, conceited or silly way. That's not a neutral description of what happened in court. Rather than simply saying that Belfield was smiling, the reporter has set out to portray him as being irritating, smug and silly. I wonder whether or not viewers get this. This is an attempt to make the defendant look bad. Natalie Fahy, who works for a local newspaper in the Midlands, has been tweeting about the defendant in the case, explaining that she had been instrumental in having his address published against his wishes and telling the world that he's blocked her on Twitter. I sense that some journalists are annoyed with him and wish to show him in a poor light. This is not really on where the trial is taking place. Reporting is supposed to be neutral and even-handed. Of course, the defendant in the case is also reporting on his own trial, which is something which I've never seen happen before, and it is even weirder than the newspaper reports. Indeed, the reports from the defendant almost seem to be covering a different case from the one we are seeing in the newspapers. Today, he tweeted, "My dream came true. Finally, the whole truth is being exposed, something I've begged for since 2011. Listening to his commentary on YouTube is rather an odd and disconcerting business. The newspapers and websites are full of accounts of alleged stalking and allegations that after he left the BBC he sent 5,000 emails to one woman in the course of 5 years, which works out at roughly 3 a day over that course of time, and some pretty unsavoury accusations as well, which the newspapers are reporting. From Belfield's account of his case, though, the barrister assigned to him by the court to ask questions on his behalf appears to be ignoring these accusations, which are after all what the charges relate to, and focusing instead upon such things as whether the listening figures for some radio programme went up or down after the defendant stopped working for the BBC. In other words, the newspapers are covering a trial which centres around allegations of stalking, but Alex Belfield seems rather to be reporting on a case of unfair dismissal from his employment. I don't doubt for a moment that his quotations are accurate, but it still gives a strange feel to the business, as though his barrister has been instructed to ignore the stalking and concentrate on whether or not his client was correctly removed from his employment. Between these two extremes, on the one hand, newspapers trying to get in little digs about a defendant, and on the other hand, the defendant trying to persuade people that he should still have his job with the BBC, it's difficult to make any kind of balanced judgment about what has been going on.